Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon Bu Anggani. Good afternoon my friends. How are you today? I hope you fine and always in good condition. Okay, today we are from group 5 in class of assessment, and we will discuss about authentic assessment. For the first presenter is me, Siti Mukarramah, and the second presenter is Mbak Lili Sulistianti. Topics of authentic assessment in part 1 including definition, goals, characteristics, types, and examples. Now definition. Let's see what is authentic assessment. Authentic assessment is learning by doing. Teachers observe student performance or ask students to provide evidence of doing something authentic to demonstrate progress with meeting standard. The word authentic is understood to mean something that is true, real, or actual. The basis of authentic assessment is that students can improve their knowledge through applying what they have learned to the real world. Authentic assessment according to experts. Authentic assessment describes the multiple forms of assessment that reflect student learning, motivation, and attitudes on instructionally relevant classroom activities, OMELI and peers. Authentic assessment refers to assessment tasks that resemble reading and writing in the real world and in school. Hubert, Valencia, Everbar, and Wiggins. Authentic intellectual work involves original application of knowledge and skills, rather than just a routine use of facts and procedures. Newman, Ruskin, and Carmichael. Educators define authentic assessment as an approach to measure student performance in a direct, relevant way to see if the learning objectives were met. In the classroom, the term authentic assessment describes the multiple forms of assessment that reflect student learning, achievement, motivation, and attitudes. Goals. Okay, let's see goals of authentic assessment. First, enhance the development of real-world skills. Encourage higher-order cognitive skills such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Promote active construction of creative, novel ideas and responses. Encourage emphasis on both the process and product of learning. Promote the integration of a variety of related skills into a holistic project. Enhance students' ability to self-assess their own work and performance. And now, why should educators use authentic assessment? It is because the goal of authentic assessment is to enhance the learning process and help students gain knowledge while completing tasks that are beneficial to their real-world experiences. Authentic assessment works great for groups, so students can get experience collaborating on projects with their peers. They don't have to memorize facts for a test, so they can use their creativity to show what they have learned. For older students who can use a combination of writing and speaking, authentic assessment helps them refine their writing and oral presentation skills. Now, characteristics. Characteristics of authentic assessment. First, constructed response. The student construct responses based on experiences. Second, higher order thinking. Here, responses are made to open-ended questions that require skills in analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Next, authenticity. Tasks are meaningful, challenging, and engaging activities. Next, integrative. Tasks call for a combination of skills that integrate language arts with other content across the curriculum. Process and product. Procedures and strategies for deriving potential responses and exploring multiple solutions to complex problems in place of a final product. The last step in place of grid performance assessment built over time with varied activities to reflect growth and depth. And now let's see characteristics of authentic tasks. Another way that authentic assessment is commonly distinguished from traditional assessment is in terms of their defining attributes. Let's see the attributes listed below. In the left, traditional, and in the right, authentic. Traditional, selecting a response, and authentic, performing a task. Traditional, contribute, and authentic, real life. Traditional, recall or recognition, and authentic, construction or application. Traditional, teacher structured, and authentic, student structured. Traditional, indirect evidence, and authentic, direct evidence. One of the biggest benefits to authentic assessment is it allows students to demonstrate knowledge in a variety of ways that they may have not that they may not have been able to demonstrate through traditional assessment. Now, types and examples. Types of authentic assessment. First, oral interviews. Here, teacher asks students questions about personal background, activities, readings, and other interests. Story or text retelling. Student retells main ideas or selected details of text experienced through listening or reading. Next, writing samples. Student generates narrative, expository, persuasive, or reference paper. And next, projects or exhibitions. Student works with other students as a team to create a project that often involves multimedia production, oral and written presentation, and also display. Experiments or demonstrations. Student documents a series of experiments, illustrates a procedures, performs the necessary steps to complete a task, and documents the results of the actions. Then, constructed response items. Student responds in writing to open-ended question. And then teacher observation. Teacher observes and documents the students' tension and interaction in the class, responds to instructional materials, and cooperative work with other students. And the last, portfolios. A focused collection of student work to show how progress over time. Examples of authentic assessment. Okay, first, conduction research and writing report. And next, character analysis. Student debates, individual or group. And next, presentation. And next, projects. Then, portfolios. Student self-assessment and also peer assessment and evaluation. And drawing and writing about a story or chapter. Now, student authentic intellectual work example. Students work instructed to write a short fable that illustrates the moral, and it must include conversation or dialogue. Okay, let's see the example. The bear's decision. Okay, you can read the text and please understand it. Okay. By inventing and organizing the story's different parts, the student constructed knowledge. The details of the story coherently develop, illustrate elaborated writing, and in-depth understanding of the concepts of fable and moral. The intellectual work was directed to present problems relevant to the lives of students and others outside of school. Okay, I think that's all my presentation. This is the references. Thank you for watching. And the next is second presenter, Mbak Lili Sulistianti. Okay, thanks for your attention. Mbak Lili's time is yours. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, the Honorable my lecturer Ibu Anggani, and good afternoon my friends from Khusus 1 and Khusus 2. I am Lili Sulistianti. Will continue presentation about authentic assessment, and next explanation is about design and rubric in authentic assessment. Now look at the first is about designing authentic assessment. There are 8 steps adapted from procedures suggested by Baker in 1993 and Herman, Asbasser and Winters in 1992. Number 1 is build a team. A team here consists of teachers, parents, and administrators to begin discussion on an authentic assessment program, why authentic assessment is important, the purposes of the authentic assessments, and the role of the new assessment in instruction and in the school. 2. Determine the purpose. Determine the purpose of the assessments for use in planning instruction or for other purposes. 3. Specify objectives. Specify the instructional objective to be evaluated with the assessment. 4. Conduct staff development. The staff development is for the design team and other teachers on the purpose, use, and development of the assessment. 5. Collect sample assessment. Review some samples of assessment for suitability in your school or distinct to meet local purposes and objectives. 6. Adapt existing assessment where it is possible or not for your school, and by adapt existing instruction to meet local purposes by changing the item content, format, or scoring rubric. 7. Try out the assessment. Give the assessments to students, score the paper, and discuss the assessments with students and other teachers. And the last step is review the assessments. Discuss the assessment with other members of the team and make final adjustment to the assessment or the rubrics. Alright, now let's see the first assessment is in portfolio assessment. In portfolio assessment, there are three kinds of assessment. The first is self-assessment. As the English language learner students at beginning levels of proficiency in English need time not only to acquire the language but also to be able to communicate their ideas and plans. And then because of this, students will need extra support in using portfolio until they've been in your classroom for at least 1 or 2 full grading periods. And then in this self-assessment, teachers should learn how to support students in evaluating their own progress. Next is teacher assessment. In this assessment, the teacher are given the student role in assessment, and then what then is the teacher role here? The teacher's role in authentic assessment is of student is multifaceted. The teacher should give models approaches to learning and assessment, facilitates student self-assessment, and manages the evidence of learning. And the third is collaborative assessment. In this assessment, both teacher and student have the opportunity to evaluate the students' work. They are ready to participate in portfolio conference to discuss student progress. Next is about oral language assessment. Before we are going to the assessment in oral language, here are the communicative language function. The first is greetings or leave taking. Second, requesting information or assistance. And then third, giving information or assistance. Fourth, describing, and the last is expressing feelings. And then in the activity, students use language too. In greeting, they meet and greet others or say goodbye, and requesting is the activity is ask for information or help, and giving information or assistance is provide information or assistance in response to a request. Describing the activity is about to tell about a place, thing, or idea. And expressing feelings, the activity is to relate what he or she feels or thinks. Here are the rubric for holistic oral language scoring rubric. There are 6 levels in this rubric, from the lowest to the highest and then we can see that in this scoring rubric, the first that assess about communicative competence, and then about fluency, about mastery in variety of grammatical structure, and then about the vocabulary, the mastering vocabulary, and then about the understanding about the classroom dialogue. This is about the if the learner or student has the highest the highest the highest rating or level, so he or she will the first communicate competently in social and classroom setting, and then speak fluently, masters a variety of grammatical structure, uses extensive vocabulary, and understands classroom dialogue. While the for rating 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 is there are still some errors. Next is analytic oral language scoring rubric. In this rubric, there are some criteria will assess the verses in speaking, and then fluency, structure, vocabulary, and listening. For the highest level, the focus on speaking the learner must be communicates competently in social and classroom setting, and then in fluency, the learners or student will speak fluently. In structures, the learners masters a variety of grammatical structures, and then vocabulary. The learners uses extensive vocabulary but may like behind native speaking peers, and then in listening, understand classroom discussion without difficulty. Alright, this is the example of self-assessment of oral language. And the formula here or the table is the learner or students should put a check in the box that show that what you or learner can do, and then the learner or student should add comments. There are some statement or item like number 1, I can ask question in class, and then the learner should put a check in the what level he or she mastered, and then give the comment or maybe reason why he or she are in that level. Next is in reading assessment. In reading assessment, here are the planning before doing the assessment. There are some activity you can do in reading assessment. The first is retelling. Retellings here in related to skill reading comprehension, and then checklist here relating to skill reading skill and reading comprehension strategies. Next is anecdotal records relating to skill reading skill, close days relating to reading skills, and then reading logs relating to reading comprehension, respond to literature, and choice in reading. Here are the developmental reading rubric. Yeah, six there are six level in this rubric. The first is emergent. This is the low level, and developing, and then beginning, expanding, bridging, and the last is fluent. The highest level is in fluent. The learners hope that he or she can, there are some criteria here. Yeah, the first is reads most literature appropriately to grade level, and then selects, read, and finishes a wide variety of materials, and uses reference materials independently, recognizes and uses literary elements and genres, and begins to interpret and expand meaning from literature, and the last participates in literary discussion. Here are the example of self-assessment of reading activities. The student or learner should put a tick in the box that is most true for the students. There are some statements here. For example, I like to read. Whether the student most of the time or sometimes or not very often in reading, whether he or she like read or not. And then number two, read at home. Whether the learner or student most of the time read at home, or maybe just sometimes or not very often. And then until the last statement, the student should put a tick based on the reality. And next is about writing assessment. There are some components in writing tasks. In day one, the activity is reading, and then in this activity, the students read the background materials on topic or take notes. Day two, discussion. In discussion, students discuss reading in small group or modify notes. And in day three is begin to make a draft. Student write the first draft, and then in day four, review rubric. Students are given the rubric and discuss its application. And then 5, edit and revise. Students edit and revise to produce the final products. Here is the holistic scoring rubric for writing assessment with ELL students. There are 6 levels in this rubric, and so many criteria here. And in this rubric is mainly the student should master in meaning, and then paragraph organization, writing competence, vocabulary, mastering vocabulary, and mastering grammatical or technical. And in this level 6, the learner or students can convey meaning clearly and effectively, present multi-paragraph organization with clear introduction, development of ideas, and conclusion. Shows evidence of smooth transition, use varied, vivid, precise vocabulary consistently, and writes with few grammatical, only little errors. For the analytic scoring rubric for writing, here there are 4 levels. From the lowest to the highest level is begins from level 1. There is little or no control in writing, and then level 2 inconsistent control, level 3 reasonable control, and level 4 is consistent control. And here is the example of the assessment, especially about self-assessment of writing strategies. The learner or students should check or should choose one of the box for each statement. The activity before writing, whether he or she talked to a friend or a partner about topic, yes or no, made a list of idea on the topic, yes or no, made an outline or a semantic map, and then during writing, the student or learner skip word I didn't know, or the student skip word he or she didn't know and went back to them later, yes or no, substitute a word from their own language, and then use drawings or picture in his or her writing, and then in after writing, the learner or student check to see if the writing met his or her purposes, yes or no, and reread to see if it made sense, edit information or took out information, yes or no, and then edit it for spelling, punctuation, capitals, and grammar, yes or no. Or maybe he or she use other strategies. They can write it in the rubric. Here are the example of portfolio assessment. This is Roxana's reading response, shows comprehension of the Robin Hood story through her drawing, a recommended model for emerging writers. We can see that Roxana answers some question in the assessment, for example, about who is the main characters, and then he draw a picture of the characters, and then other question is, did you like this book? Did you like this book, and then tell why. Next is example from Roxana. So in Roxana, this is in reading assessment. And the last is in writing. Alright, that is all the explanation about design and rubric for authentic assessment. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.